Tonight on Politicat, mayoral mayhem, how the race for Rahm's replacement is shaping up a month before Election Day.
And shutdown showdown, will the federal government ever reach a compromise? How furloughed workers are faring after a month of missed paychecks.
Plus, 2020 vision. We'll take a look at the latest candidate to throw his hat in the ring.
Those stories and more coming up on Politicat.
It's your politics right now. Good evening and welcome to Politicat. I'm Joey Safchik.
And I'm Justin Sweetwood. Let's get right into it. Two proposals to reopen the government failed to advance in the Senate earlier today. The GOP-backed proposal provided $5.7 billion for President Trump's long-promised border wall. The Democratic-backed proposal did not provide any new funding for the wall. Back on Capitol Hill, some senators say they are looking for a short-term spending deal that would reopen the government and include an agreement to draft a border security package.
Michael Cohen will testify in front of the Senate Intelligence Committee. That's according to comments from his lawyer earlier today on MSNBC. The subcommittee subpoenaed the former Trump lawyer today after he postponed an appearance before the House Oversight Committee earlier this week, citing safety concerns. He will begin his 3-year federal prison sentence in early March.
In Venezuela, thousands are protesting following the re-election of President Nicolas Maduro and are instead supporting self-declared interim president Juan Guaido. Guaido has drawn the support of the U.S. and Canada, causing Maduro to cut off diplomatic ties with the U.S. The Americans have ignored Maduro's order to leave their embassy.
In the Windy City, Chicago's mayoral race is heating up, with less than a month to go before voters head to the polls. 14 candidates are currently in the running, but the most recent survey put out by Service Employees International Union Illinois Local 1 has only 9 candidates polling at significant numbers. Cook County Board President Tony Preckwinkle holds a 6% lead with 15% of surveyed support. Still, about a third of voters remain undecided.
Preckwinkle's campaign has come under fire recently after the Chicago Tribune reported her administration hired Edward Burke Jr., son of embattled 14th Ward Alderman Edward Burke, while he was under investigation for allegations of sexual harassment. Low in the polls, Amara Enya is backed by Chicago natives Kanye West and Chance the Rapper, and those endorsements are getting her lots of attention.
And now, let's bring in our panel, Erica Snow, reporter for the Daily Northwestern, and David Gurgis, assistant politics editor for North by Northwestern. Thank you so much for joining us. Of course. 14 candidates. Now, that's a lot of people, and it's certainly the most diverse field of candidates we've seen in recent history. Erica, you've covered Chicago politics for the Wall Street Journal. This race is almost neck and neck, so what needs to happen in the next month for this race to become less of a close race?
Right. I think we won't know until about 2 weeks before who our top 2 candidates are. Until then, I think that the candidates need to distinguish themselves in some way, whether that's appealing to voters in Cook County especially, and someone really needs to pull ahead because right now it's too close to tell.
I think Erica, I think you're right in the sense that a lot can happen in the next couple of weeks, but as of right now, I think Tony Preckwinkle, Lori Lightfoot, and Susana Mendoza have fairly insurmountable leads. Those 3, I personally predict, would end up being the closest in the running to win Chicago mayor, though there is definitely a chance for an upset still. Apparently, Bill Daley's been blanketing the Chicago airwaves with ads for him. So,
David, could Preckwinkle's connection to Burke Jr. cause disruption in February?
Yes, absolutely. We've actually, right after the allegations came out that Alderman Burke had been charged with extortion, Preckwinkle and Mendoza actually came under fire from Lori Lightfoot's campaign for having accepted donations from the Burke family, I suppose. Preckwinkle initially refused to give up the money, and then after coming under fire, donated the money again, ended up donating the money. And then later tried to cover up the negative press by framing herself as one of the champions for the Laquan McDonald shooting, which put her under even more fire by progressive activists.
Erica?
Yeah, I think that a lot of Chicago politicians have tried to latch on to the Laquan McDonald and Jason Van Dyke police shooting and most have found that they come under a lot of political scrutiny there. So I think a lot of voters, now that Van Dyke has been sentenced to, I believe, just under 7 years in prison, that a lot of voters will be seeing how their politicians deal with particularly gun violence, police violence, and seeing if their candidate is someone who aligns with their values. So I think that a lot of politicians will have to refine their stances toward those issues in the coming weeks.
Erica, Enya is relying on turnout from young voters. Is this a winning strategy?
Usually, historically, no. Young voters just don't vote. I know, at least at Northwestern, most students here aren't registered to vote in Illinois, at least among my friend group. So I think that relying on more the stable voter in Cook County, the parents of local public schools is a more reliable way.
What I will say is that Enya certainly seems to think that it'll help her. She's been framing herself recently as one of the candidates in the style of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Ayanna Pressley, these insurgent women of color who've kind of defied the polls. Obviously, it remains to be seen whether or not she's going to do that, but as of right now, her poll numbers don't necessarily look good enough to clinch her any office.
Just very quickly, do you think the Chicago mayoral race would give any insight into 2020, the presidential election?
No. That's a really good I don't think so. I think the Chicago mayoral election, first of all, they're all running nonpartisan campaigns, even though a lot of them are running Democrat campaigns. I think in terms of platforms, a lot of them are running very similar platforms. That could tie into some of the questions surrounding the Democratic primaries, because a lot of them are expected to run very progressive campaigns with very similar taglines. But Chicago politics are unique for scandals and drama and all of these things. And so until Democrat primary candidates start suing each other over ballot signatures, I don't think these are going to be quite as dramatic as Chicago mayorals.
But Erica, what will it say if Enya actually does have a lot of young support and they do turn out to the polls? What will this say about 2020, if anything?
Right. I think that David brought up a great point, that there have been a lot of candidates recently who have defied conventional knowledge about young voters and about candidates we may have overlooked before. So I think that then that could tell us to look toward these, especially Democratic candidates in 2020 that we may have overlooked, look toward people who may not have as much political experience or maybe not in the mainstream, and start to take those type of people seriously.
All right, Erica, thanks so much, and we'll be right back.
At Northwestern, we're Wildcats in every way.
Cheer you all to go. Go you Northwestern, fight for victory, sweet victory, for the fame of our fair name, and go Northwestern, win that game. Go Cats!
Welcome back to Politicat. Here's this week's Money Minute. Today marks day 34 of the partial government shutdown, with no end in sight. Around 800,000 government workers have been furloughed, some being forced to work without pay. Although employees will earn their pay back once the shutdown ends, they still have to deal with their mortgages and credit card bills now. The economy is not in recession, but the longer the shutdown lasts, the greater the chance of systemic risk. The chair of the White House Council of Economic Advisors said that each week the shutdown hurts the economy by 0.13 percentage points. He even said that there might be no GDP growth this quarter. And it's not just government workers that are being affected. Farmers are unable to buy seeds and fertilizer, small business owners cannot get loans, and airlines are losing money due to fewer travelers and longer security lines. All of this as President Trump tries to rally Democrats to support his $5.7 billion border wall proposal. That's all for this week's Money Minute. Let's get back to the desk.
Thanks, Justin. The government shutdown continues to dominate the national conversation tonight. The State of the Union now postponed until Congress and the President can reach some sort of compromise. Now, 2 bills were voted down this afternoon that could have ended the stalemate. David, is there an end in sight?
Well, CNN actually just reported a couple of hours ago that the Trump administration is drafting a proposal to declare a state of emergency and demand essentially $7 billion for the wall. So if this proposal is executed, certainly the shutdown drama will have more a new twist to it because of the fact that the national emergency proposal will face Democratic challenges in court. It will lead to a lot more discussions, I think, at the very, very least. I mean, something of this nature is fairly unprecedented in American history, and so we'll have to see what happens. I'm personally not looking forward to it.
Mm-hmm. And last year, I personally covered the State of the Union from the House chamber. Fast forward, coming to now, I would have never expected the State of the Union to be pushed back. I don't think that anything is going to be happening in the next few weeks. Probably sometime in February, I would guess that it would close, but I think Trump has faced a lot of backlash over this. But President Trump is not one to back down from a fight, so he's laid down this very hard line negotiating with Democrats, and he's not willing to compromise. So that is what I think is partly led to where we are today.
And how has this shutdown affected the president's popularity? Is there really any incentive for Democrats to compromise on the budget bill?
Well, I think now that we're in a territory of ideological difference. So to Trump, the wall has been part of his campaign promise for years, and for Democrats, if any of them would acquiesce now, that would hurt them in 2020. So they're both at the middle of the road here, and they won't back down. So I think it'll be interesting to see what happens because I don't see an end in sight.
Democrats are also putting down a hard line. They will not give any funding for the wall, and I think that their line of argument has essentially been, if we acquiesce now, then this gives Trump the opportunity to shut down the government whenever he wants for whatever he wants. And I think they're right. I think they're certainly at an impasse, and I think that is affecting Trump's popularity. His approval ratings as of yesterday have been down from 40 to about 34%. Which means he's losing his base. And so Trump's declaring of a national emergency is, I think, a way for him to kind of last-ditch effort gain some of his base back. But the majority of Americans don't want a wall. And the majority of Americans think that shutting down the government over the wall was an awful thing to do for the country and for the 800,000 workers, my God, affected by the shutdown.
So speaking of those 800,000 workers affected by the shutdown, this morning on CNBC, White House Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross said he doesn't understand why furloughed government workers are turning to food banks, and that he suggested they should take out a loan to support themselves until the government reopens. So like you said, 800,000 people are out of work right now and have been for more than a month. And it feels to some like critics of the president that Congress and the president just really don't care. So how do these federal workers factor into all of this?
Well, it's funny because I actually want to comment a little bit on Wilbur Ross's statements. His own credit union is actually charging people 9% interest for taking out loans if they're federal workers. So it's a little galling to see these people who have no idea of what the working class American goes through talk about the shutdown like they're making this noble sacrifice for the good of border security when all they want to do is go back to work and get paid for it.
Yeah, I definitely think these hundreds of thousands of people put a certain type of political pressure on both the president and the Republican Party. But as with Trump as its leader, he's clearly signaled that he's not backing down. So while there is this pressure from all these people, we see them going to food banks, going and getting additional help, working for a month without pay. This political pressure clearly hasn't worked yet.
And who do you think is going to come out on top of the shutdown? Who's going to prevail?
Great question. I mean, I don't know. I mean, the longer the shutdown goes on, the longer people people feel their effects. I mean, this is actually going to affect every single American because the IRS has already stated that tax returns are going to be delayed this year. This has already started affecting people's welfare. This is going to be more. This is going to end up affecting way more than 800,000 people, and so the people who are going to lose are, I think, the Republicans, because they're being aligned with Trump's border security pledge, this whole wall thing. So I don't know who's going to, I think if Democrats do come out of this quote unquote winning, it's going to be a bit of a Pyrrhic victory because it's going to come at the expense of millions of Americans.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's almost odd to think about this as a win or lose situation. Right. It definitely is a political challenge is what it's come to, but I think ultimately Trump and the Republican Party will end up losing just because he has to take, as president, he takes responsibility, I guess, for this. It's his job. The government shutdown ended when Congress was controlled by Republicans in both chambers. So ultimately, this is his political fall. So we'll have to see when that happens, hopefully before tax season.
He also said that he would be the one to shut down the government. He said he would be proud to shut down the government. Well, look what happened. I mean, like, there's nothing else to say on that. Like, look what happened when you shut down the government.
Okay, David, here's what I want to know.
Yeah.
So the State of the Union might not be given at Congress for the first time, potentially ever. Where will it be given? Is there a chance that it could be given at the border?
So actually, this is not the first time that the State of the Union hasn't been given in the House floor. I think Nancy Pelosi actually mentioned in her letter that right up until sometime in the 1800s, the State of the Union wasn't delivered; it was written, and so part of the national emergency proposal suggests that he will be delivering a speech at the border. There have been talks about delivering it in the Senate floor, but Trump shut that down when he acquiesced to doing this at a later date. We don't know. All we know for a fact that it's Speaker Pelosi's house and she's not inviting him in.
Erica, if he does give it at the border or another venue, is there a chance that he could turn it into a Trump rally?
I think definitely, just because the nature of where, let's say it's at the border, the nature of that location is politically advantageous for him. So I think that could turn into whatever he wanted it to be, and that's kind of the way that the speech is oriented, where the president is supposed to tell you how the State of the Union is. So if he can give whatever message he wants, and if he's deciding to give it at the border and he's saying the state of our union is weak and here I am at the border and it's weak, then I could definitely see that as a possibility if he holds it there. But I think it would definitely be unprecedented, so I'd be interested to see what really happens.
And do you think that this is a new precedent for American politics or shutdowns in our future?
I hope not. I think part of the reason why the Democrats are standing their ground is so that the shutdowns don't become normal. And I think it is so important to realize that this shouldn't be normal. This isn't normal anywhere else in the world. No other country does their budgeting this way. And the longer the government shuts down, the more people are affected. And so we shouldn't make this normal.
Mm-hmm. Well, government shutdowns in the past few years are more or less normal in American politics. The government doesn't usually pass an omnibus bill that provides funding for every single part of the government in one piece. Usually the government is passing CRs or continuing resolutions that temporarily hold us over. So while I was in Washington, there was another shutdown last year. So I mean, it is fairly common now. I think that just speaks to partisanship in today's American politics, but usually we're getting by in a piecemeal fashion and slowly funding the government while we need to. So, but definitely this shutdown of this length is unprecedented.
And we'll leave it there for now. We'll be right back.
At Northwestern, we're Wildcats in every way.
Go Northwestern, break right through that. With our colors flying, we will cheer you all to go. Go you Northwestern, fight for victory, sweet victory, spread for the fame of our fair name, and go Northwestern, win that game. Go Cats!
We know the news can be a little overwhelming, so we're going to catch you up on a few stories you might have missed. It's a new lightning fast segment called News You Didn't Know. First, a highly anticipated vote in Greece was expected to take place earlier today, but has been postponed until tomorrow. Greek parliament is looking to settle a 27-year-old's controversy over the name of its neighbor, the former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia. Macedonia wants to become the former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia, known just as North Macedonia. Heated debates in Athens incited protests and caused the delay.
Latin America's first transgender school recently opened in Chile. 28 transgender students are currently enrolled. Chile has been a traditionally conservative nation. It didn't even legalize divorce until 2004. This November, a law was passed allowing transgender people over age 14 in Chile to update their names on legal documents. The school hopes to protect its students from bullying.
Jay Paterno, the former Penn State assistant football coach, has declared his love for Saudi Arabia. His op-ed was published on a site run by the Saudi government, and he wrote, quote, "My visit to Saudi Arabia changed all my perceptions." Paterno is the son of longtime Nittany Lion head coach Joe Paterno.
Now we're going to welcome back our panel for Politicat, where we talk about politics stories taking social media by storm. We'll start with Cardi B, snatching headlines this week for responding to conservative columnist Stephanie Hamill, who questioned how her music video, which features a lot of twerking, empowers women. Cardi took the bait, tweeting, quote, "I can wear and not wear whatever I want, do whatever I want, and that no still means no." It's also worth noting that the video doesn't feature any men. So do you all have any thoughts about this video on our panel?
I think our tweet still stands that obviously it's a free country. People can wear whatever they want and say whatever they want, and what they say goes. So I don't see it as that controversial.
I don't have any thoughts on the video. It's Cardi B. She can do whatever she wants. This is her thing. I have thoughts on Stephanie Hamill trying to come at her for, suggesting that just because women can show off their bodies, it means that it means a certain thing. No, it doesn't. They can do whatever they want.
So
that's literally it.
Stephanie Hamill did reference the Me Too movement. What do you think it says about the video that there are no men on camera?
I don't think it says anything. It's just it's a music video. I think the thing that's the problem is Stephanie Hamill coming in and pointing out these things that she believes in about the Me Too movement. Women can show off their bodies, and that's it. That's literally it. Stephanie Hamill has no business talking about this because she's not in the music video. It's not her. No. That's.
Should pop stars be getting involved in politics? Cardi B did that Instagram live about the government shutdown maybe a week ago. Is that her place?
I mean, I think celebrities have always been involved in politics. So, holding a position of power, some choose to wield it and, give their message. So, it's to each their own. She feels the need, and it was really entertaining and got people talking about it. So, arguably, it was successful.
All right, Erica. NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell has been called to testify in the House before an antitrust subcommittee. Congressman Cedric Richmond of Louisiana wants the commissioner to answer for a missed call in the January 20th playoff game between the Saints and the Rams that many Saints fans feel cost their team a trip to the Super Bowl. Now, did you guys see the play?
Okay, I'm from LA, and that play was wild. It was mean. It should have been called, and yeah, it could have cost the game. I read a really good article in the Wall Street Journal about this, and the columnist was arguing that a lot of refs are hesitant to call plays that may affect the outcome of the game. And maybe that's true or not, but I think it definitely should have been called, and I think it's, even being from LA, I think it's right for a lot of Saints fans to be upset about that.
Is this just a publicity stunt from the congressman?
I have no idea what any of you guys are talking about. Sorry.
I just learned about it yesterday.
Okay, well, I don't actually think this man is asking for Roger Goodell to testify before Congress. It's just an easy way for him to
tie it back into Politicat. It could be a political stunt. Justin can explain more about that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't honestly think that he can do anything about it. I mean, the commissioner does have the sole authority to actually replay the game, so they could go back from a certain time and finish the game. But I don't think anyone thinks that's realistic. So I think this is mainly just a political stunt.
I'm learning so many new
a
things
whole new
today.
vocabulary.
I know.
All right, let's leave it right there. We'll be right back.
At Northwestern, we're Wildcats in every way.
Go you Northwestern. Go Northwestern, break right through that. With our colors flying, we will cheer you all to go. Go you Northwestern, fight for victory, sweet victory, spread for the fame of our fair name, and go Northwestern, win that game. Go Cats!
We're still 22 months away from the 2020 presidential election, but the race is already heating up. So far, 9 Democratic candidates have thrown their hats into the ring. That's a lot to keep track of, so this quarter we thought we'd break down each candidate and their odds for the nomination.
Pete Buttigieg is the most recent candidate to announce he's running, and perhaps the most interesting. He is 37 and an openly gay, married man from Indiana, home of Mike Pence. He's also a war vet, Harvard grad, and Rhodes Scholar. Should he win, he would become America's first millennial president. His political career to date includes 2 terms as mayor of South Bend, Indiana, and well, that's about it. But according to a Gallup poll in 2015, 24% of the American population would not vote for, quote, a generally well-qualified person if they were gay or lesbian. Those numbers have probably declined in recent years, but mayors don't tend to do well in presidential elections. You have to go back to DeWitt Clinton in 1812 to find the last and only time a sitting mayor was nominated for president by a major party. Now, Joey, do you think Buttigieg stands a chance?
It's still too early to say for sure, but he does have a lot working in his favor. Former President Barack Obama name-dropped Buttigieg as a potential torchbearer for the Democratic Party back in 2016. He has more experience appealing to minority voters than you might think. Nearly half of South Bend was non-white in 2017, and the city did elect him mayor. Buttigieg also has an impressive track record in South Bend. He led ambitious revitalization efforts which spurred economic growth in the city, which was hard hit by the 2008 recession. And he is credited for a recent uptick in the city's population after decades of decline. If nothing else, his bid begins to hone a national Democratic message, and it helps normalize the idea of an openly gay president. That reason alone makes him one to watch.
That's all the time we have for tonight. I'm Justin Sweetwood.
And I'm Joey Safchik. Thanks for watching.